Okay, I'm live. Perfect. It's become deliberate. Well, let's see if some people jump on here pretty quick. We'll give them a shot. So, for many years, I've been talking about how I see the Lord and what I do. All right. And there are some people that have seen me enjoy an enormous amount of success, and some people seen me follow my face. But the thing about it is we've got to be deliberate in our motions through along this path. So when I offer an interpretation, I'm not trying to act like an ace book. But what I am saying to you is that if you'll look at it this way, you're going to come out on top. It points it out in the very first part of the lore when both of the kings show up. They approach by the way of the river or the snake. They take a crooked path to get there. They're sneaking in. It's human nature. We do the same thing. We're going to pick that path that causes the least amount of problem or pain or hurt. Something that's easy to deal with, right? And once we're aware of this path and we're going to follow it, why would we shortchange ourselves in what we can get out of it? Or what does that look like? So, on the left and on the right, you have, well, we got to do something to build the folk. On the right, well, we got to do something to fight Nazis. Both of them are fine ideas that allow for the individual to negate the idea of taking the more difficult path of personal development and growth. That's what they are. At face value, sit down, take a good long look at it. It is the ability to negate the challenge of taking the more difficult aspect of the path, of following the idea that the things that I suggest here. Well, I don't really need to do that. That's a nice interpretation, but I don't need to do that. Why? Do you want to have the same success I have? Do you want to enjoy the same things that I've got to enjoy in life? What does that look like? At its best, $350 a year. Isn't that sad though? That the most common quality that someone could come up with is, well, what's the value of what you're trying to teach us? What can I use this for in the world? It comes down to money, doesn't it? And then everybody gets upset. Oh, he's just in it for the money. Well, I am not in it for the money on this, I can tell you. Right? But the ability to negotiate the individual aquariums that we all live in is an everyday struggle. And when I suggest to you that these things that I'm talking about represent some of the ideas that more effectively allow you to negotiate that, you have to identify in your mind, what will I look like if I accept what he says and try it at work? Will it allow me to move up the ladder, so to speak? Will it allow me to earn more money? Will it allow me to become stronger as an individual? Will it allow me to become better as a partner? And I would submit to you that all of those things are entirely possible when people listen to these interpretations that I put out. We have so many different, what do you per se, leaders in Austro Norse paganism and so on and so forth. And everybody wants to be right. And I get that. Everybody wants to be right. Everybody feels like passionately about the things that they believe in. They feel passionately that this is the right path for them. They feel passionately that the things they're talking about are absolutely right. And they probably are. Here's the litmus test, though. Can you share that with someone in 3 words? Can you point out how your effective use of these things has allowed you to negotiate all of the struggles that life has to offer? Many of them that we create for ourselves. 90% of the obstacles that have appeared in my path were my fault. I put them there. When we decide to avoid that obstacle and choose a grander idea of, well, I'm fighting Nazis or I'm doing it for the folk, and decide to go that path instead of handling that obstacle, we are shortchanging ourselves in the truest sense of the word. There's no growth there. The obstacle is the way every single time. And the most important thing we can do with regards to any of the path that we wish to believe in is to become deliberate in our actions with regards to our spirituality. Because if there's one thing that look at your head and your heart to go somewhere, it's your faith, it's your spirituality. And when we come across an emotional obstacle or a mental obstacle or a physical development obstacle or a sickness or any kind of loss or any kind of challenge that we bring upon ourselves, your head's going to be over here, your heart's going to be over here, and your ass is going to stay right where it is. That's no way to live. And believing that if we adopt high-minded ideals to follow, that we might build something magnificent together when we remain in the same spot that we're in, is at face value probably one of the more asinine consistencies we find throughout this spirituality. So how do we grow up? How do we found the path? We know there's a better way. We know that it works for all kinds of people. We know that individuals have, to some extent, largely changed their lives. Now, that's not necessarily for the better. They may still be working at 7-Eleven, partying on the weekends, and and not going anywhere in the world. They may not have rebuilt their relationship with anyone in their past. They may not have taken care of all of that emotional baggage that they're carrying. Their mind is over here, their heart is over there, and their ass is staying right where it is because their spirituality is allowing them to not challenge the comfort zone that we all want to live in. Everybody wants to be comforted. It seems to be the standard of idea here in the world. Is well, I'm comfortable. I'm good enough right now. I'm comfortable. That obstacle, comfort in itself, is an obstacle. Now, I do not subscribe to the people that wholeheartedly say, "Well, I'm going to reject modernity, modern ideas." Listen, that our ancestors had cutting edge technologies that allowed them to win wars that other people couldn't begin to fathom, right? So it's always been the one-upsmanship. The challenge is not with the world we live in. The challenge is with how we become the people that negotiate these obstacles in this world. Money seems to be the best way to do that. All right. So how do you grow into you? Well, what does that look like? Well, one of the things that it looks like is what happens at Eager's Feast, where everyone stands up for each other. Every thought, every emotion, every idea negates the negativity that's being brought forth by Loki. All right. So we have to change our thoughts and we change our reality. That's the very heart of the idea of Eager's Feast. Right? He is the negative thought. He is the weed in the garden of our thoughts. It's the human ego run amok. Well, I'm great because my mind is over here and my heart is over here and my ass is sitting right here watching the football game, but I'm great because I've picked a winner. That's not necessarily the obstacle that we're looking for. I love sports. I love everything about them. I like the idea that people get out there and want to compete to become better. Um, the fact that it's become the bread and circuses of this modern age is something we need to be aware of. But that doesn't mean we need to say, well, I reject my identity and I'm not going to do that. Well, then don't do it. But don't negate somebody else that's trying. Right? The idea and the spirit of competition is something that allows people to live their dreams. That's one of the things we got to do. So if we found our path and we've begun to approach it and understand that the obstacle is the way, that our spirituality, our faith is what gets our heart and our mind lined up to go in one direction, instead of splitting it off over here and this is what my heart really wants, but my mind is over here because all these people say, well, I got to do this or I got to do that. That's not congruent with living a life of integrity. That's a real challenge. That's the obstacle that we're facing. How do we do that? So we start identifying who we are. Sometimes it begins just with identifying who we are not. But we got to be careful about identifying who we are, because we're so much more than we are our deeds. We're so much more than just the collected history. I love all the great things I've achieved in the world. I'm so proud of all of them. I've done some big and wonderful things. I've also done some awesome and terrible things. But that doesn't kind of shaped my thought process. But when we come to this path, there should be an innate understanding that maybe that thought process wasn't shaped properly for us to achieve what we want to do. We keep creating these situations that form more and more and more baggage that we have to pull through life, and it becomes wearisome to trudge that road to happy destiny. How do we overcome that? Well, when we find the path, we begin to have this idea of there's a renaissance of life and perhaps faith. And it's all laid out there for us. So when I offer an interpretation, I'm offering an interpretation not because I feel like I'm the most right, but because I believe that if you do these kind of things or take it in the suggestion that it is and implement it in your life, you too will be able to walk right up to that obstacle and through it like the champion we all want to believe that we are. To make more money, to be more successful, to build a stronger family. All of those things that go together that allow us to move forward in the world and secure our place rightfully in it. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means, but that's up to you. Right? You're the one that's going to create the vision of what you want to look like. And that always means taking the more difficult path. That always means the obstacle is the path. Not to go around it, not to avoid it, not to use some powerful social ideology to negate the opportunity to go through that path. This is how we grow up into who we are. No one ever lays that out. And the whole idea that this spirituality showed up now is because the herd instinct of so much of modern society is denying individuals the opportunity to express, feel, achieve, or even attempt for the greatness that they feel they are worth. Something somewhere. Yep. Could be. Yeah. I check out early. I'm done. But this whole idea of a transformation to ascend is repeated throughout mythologies around the world. The symbolic idea of death of these heroes, most of them solar deities, is, we can align that with the sun and we can take it for that face value as it is, but it's also an example of how our lives are. It's not a constant even keel. We're going to have ups and downs, just like spring, summer, winter, and fall. Our lives are going to do the same thing because that's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we're built. We are a part of this world, whether we don't feel like we are or not. Everything about our movement on this world separates us from the planet we live on. Everything about how we live separates us from the planet that we live on. Now, unless you're a farmer out in the country and you're handling business the way our ancestors did, then you have that exception to the rule. But even then, you got to get in the truck to go to town, right? You got to have fuel to run the tractor. All of those things. There is a way to get back to that, and so much of that ability to return to what makes you feel more secure in your ability in this world is determining who you really are. Eckhart Tolle puts out a real neat idea, and it's a concept that's been supported by science. I wrote about it in Blind in One Eye. Right, that we are so much more than all the thoughts we think. Descartes suggested that I think, therefore I am. That's kind of true and kind of not true. There's an energy behind all of that, and perhaps the Norse had the most with all the different parts of the soul, right? All the different parts, and there have been several studies that conclude that there are receptors in our brain that are always receiving information from somewhere outside of who we are, outside of our existence, outside of the five senses, and not in the sections of the brain that govern memory or thoughts or dreams. You never got to apologize to me, babe. That idea of the transformation to ascend is constantly being fed through that. Now, it's like they liken it to an antenna, a television antenna, but we don't know where the transmission originates. Excuse me. Now, if we want to believe that it's spiritual, supernatural guidance, some kind of divine connection. The only thing that does is reinforce our ability to believe in our faith. Now, you can take it for what you want to. You don't have to believe that. I choose to believe it because it helps me have faith. There's a scientific kind of explanation here for something that's beyond scientific understanding and explanation. That's what it was. There you go. Yeah, exactly. Where do those thoughts originate? Those aha moments, those ideas. I mean, I've published, 45 books or more. And sometimes those aha moments just come and they just pour. I don't have a structure in my books. I just kind of they just kind of come out. I start writing and sometimes it's emotionally overwhelming. And Shanae's seen it. She has seen me sit there and put these words on paper that absolutely come from my heart, and I get choked up, and just the real truth of what I feel and think and believe and comes out. And sometimes, yeah, sometimes there may be stress relieved through my eyes, right? But it's because I'm trying to figure out who I am. All of my books have been that. I found the path. I found the path and I began to see these certain things. And I'll tell you what, it has carried me through a lot. The deaths of family members, the loss of relationships, the loss of jobs, the absolute failings of personal nature, and then the ability to stand back up, because that's always got to be the most important. Do I have the ability to stand back up, no matter what my failing might have been? Do I have the ability to stand on 2 feet and take it? Now, some days I might be of a mindset that I don't feel like listening to anyone try to correct me, right? I get pretty arrogant who I am, right? I'm big enough to stand there and say, I don't feel like listening, you go away. Or like Doc Holliday says in Tombstone, I forgot you were there, you may go now. Something smart ass like that. That's not the kind of thing that allows me to grow, though, is it? Sometimes paying attention to other people's perceptions is something I have to weigh carefully. Okay, do I need to buy into that or no? I haven't always had that choice. I haven't always been able to sort the wheat from the chaff when somebody starts telling me their opinion of me. And the real thing is that so much of it happens online today. It's it is people are killing themselves over it. Children are paralyzed with fear of saying the wrong thing, and a whole horde of morons jump on them and tell them, "Oh, you're wrong, you're wrong." Um, they're doing the best they can with what they're got. They're trying to grow up. We have a horde of individuals that have no accountability, telling our children. Mm. So my ability to learn how to sort that, as I was talking about with get it right, get up eight. My ability to sort through that comes from what I discussed in Eager's Feast. How one negative thought ruins with a collection of good thoughts that allow for a positive life, right? The death, the transformation, the death of the self, and the death of the ego, right? That allows all these solar deities to ascend to become something more is always the example. It always sucks when we hear these things and then all of a sudden we realize some of that's true. Damn, some of that really hit home. Some of that was absolutely right on the money. That's a friend that tells you that. That's a friend that says you're screwing up and this is why. You're on a course of self-destruction and this is why. That asshole who's being hard on you, that's your friend. Not the people that say, "Oh, you're doing fine, everything's okay." So as we go through life in our 20s, so much of our worth and determination is determined by our success in sports and school, by what our friends say about us. We're largely, and we learned it from our parents. When we do something good, our parents rewarded us. And then in the school, when we do something good, our friends hung around us. And, we kind of learned that. But as we get older, we begin to say, that's not right. And we begin to determine our self-worth by things that we do on the inside, by things that we begin to understand innately. And that's where we learn patience and wisdom and compassion and those kind of things that matter in the world. not the outcry of public opinion and people marching in the streets with various things attached to their head, but the kind of things that allow me to set an example so my child might grow up to be a positive influence in the world. Yeah, when I first got into Austro and I was writing Austro Book of Days, there were several people that absolutely hated that book. Most of them were the Theodish. Most of them were Theodish. And their whole philosophy was is if they recreated the ceremonies accurately enough, something amazing would happen spiritually. So some of these bloats and these other ceremonies would be 2 and 3 hours long and just ridiculously overpriced. So I know I had one particular group. They each formed like 3 different personas on Facebook and began to really go through all the groups and tear me down and take note of it. And one of them even published a book, Bryan Wilton Doesn't Understand Austro. And it went on and on and on. And I was really under the lash with these guys. Now, that's the thing about all this is that when that kind of stuff happens, those individuals that you believe to be your friends on social media do not stand up for you. They will not stand up. They will not say, no, you're absolutely wrong. Bryan Wilton showed me how to do this, and I've used it in my life, and I've moved forward. What can you do? Right? That kind of small-mindedness with regards to it was most appropriately addressed by Freya Aswin when I interviewed her. And she said, Bryan, it all comes from the same well. Whether it's right or it's left, it all comes from the same well. Our ability to sort through that information requires an enormous amount of effort. No, these you might know them that they're out of Boston. I'll leave it at that. If it was technically the guy could have taken over for Garmin, but anyway, I digress on that. I could have handled that situation better too. So I went out of my way and went on a public war with them and made an ass of myself. And these are probably very good men in certain regards. And not being far enough along down the path to understand that they had something to contribute, I waged a relentless war from the position that I had. And I had a bullhorn that had 100,000 listeners a month. That did me no good. And that didn't help anybody. Nothing about that effort was beneficial to the entirety of this movement on the left or the right. There was no aspects of personal growth. There was me tired of being relentlessly attacked by a bunch of people that probably weren't qualified to carry my water bucket. That kind of comment like that is pure ego. Whether it be true or not, it's not my place to make that decision. There are people in this world that probably thought a lot of them. It was the same thing when I was in Korea on the DMZ. I'll never forget. It took me many years to learn this, but I remember watching a North Korean soldier through my sights. And I was thinking, if I shoot this soldier, I can go home to avoid an international incident because I hated being in Korea. Right out of basic training, right to the DMZ, patrolling the DMZ, do your recon at day, go on your patrol at night. And many years later, after I came in here, I began to think about it. Never crossed my mind that person that I was willing to shoot had a family. They had a mother and a father. They may have had some girl that loved them. They may even have had children. They had people that cared for them, and they were doing their duty. And here I was, laying in a position more than ready to take their life. For what? Well, obviously for the glory of the country, but in that instance, we weren't technically at war. There was still a peace treaty engaged, but here we were doing this thing. When we come across individuals online that are doing that, it's a very hard thing to take that high road and understand that that obstacle is my path. That obstacle is my path. There's some people in Canada right now that I don't think very highly of, um, bullying each other so much that some of them are ready to commit suicide, spreading outright lies, slander, and gossip, creating a huge problem for everyone around them. Instead of taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and running for public office and trying to enact change and trying to work through the problem, instead of finding some way to help individuals become something more and become a beneficial member of their community, they've decided to form an online group and talk shit about everybody. This aspect of so much of what we see is the very poison of modernity that I see so many people wish to reject. I don't blame them. That's also the opportunity for growth. That's also the opportunity for us to step up to the plate and demonstrate who and what we really are and why this faith matters to the world. To step up to the plate and really become something, to take some of these suggestions and these ideas and move them, because one of the things we got to figure out after we find our path and figure out who, right? It's cold and wet in Germany, but it was cold and wet in Korea too. I remember laying in the position for 2 hours, needing to pee so bad that I was about ready to just lay in it because, and it was raining. It was October. It was cold. I didn't like it at all. But anyway, I know my son was in Germany. But that's the other thing we got to figure out is where we are. So we know our path. We're beginning to figure out who we are. This whole stage of discovery, now we got to figure out the lay of the land, our bearing. Where are we in life? Is engaging in these kind of things going to be fruitful in any kind of endeavor? Is it going to line our pocketbook? Is it going to help us feed our family? Is it going to help us deal with the loss? Is it going to help us, pay the rent? Is it going to help us, set a standard that our kids can be proud of? Is it going to do those kind of things? Where really are we in life? That's where we begin to really wake up. That's where we really begin to say, okay, I'm on this new path. I'm not really sure what's going on. That's just a magnificent act of faith you can come by. That blind acceptance of my ancestor did this, I'm going to do it too because it worked for them. It's got to work for me because what I'm doing right now is not helping me out. I am not getting where I want to be. I am dealing with pain, anger, all this damn baggage. I can't keep a relationship. I can't hold a job. All of these things that bring us to this crossroads of this powerful faith that says, hey, I found a path. I'm going to give it a shot. Then we got to go in here and start taking a look at ourselves. All right, who am I? That may not be the kind of person I want to act like. That may not be the kind of person that's going to do me any good. That may be the kind of person that's really building more blockades in my road than I need to deal with. Okay, maybe I need to stop doing that. All right, I've stopped doing that. Hey, the road becomes a little clearer, becomes a little straighter. Holy cow, maybe my faith is working a little bit. Now let's take a look where we are in the world. We're walking on a path we ain't never been on. Right? Most of the time we're doing it alone. Most of the time, there ain't anybody. You might get online and get a little word of encouragement, but most of the time, there isn't anybody that's saying, hey, you're on the right path. You're doing great. We're proud of you, right? They're saying, at my father's funeral, I'll never forget it. My father's cousins walked up to me and they said, your daddy sure didn't like them kind of books you was writing. He really didn't like them at all. And I thought to myself, what kind of individual would say that at my father's funeral to tell me how disappointed my father was in me? Hell, I already knew that because I had lived a life that didn't bring any pride to it. I'd been in the service, got a chest full of medals, a wall full of accolades. I built a company making $350,000 a year, doing construction management in a booming industry, right? I'd gone to work in the power plants, rebuilt them, started as a helper, moved up to a superintendent, right? All of these things. And yet the fact that I was following this path was so alien, nobody appreciated that this path was allowing me to become what I needed to become. That it was allowing me to show the way to other people. That it was allowing me to help other people. And at the bottom line, the end of the day, that is my favorite thing in the world to do, is to help someone through the toughest time they're in. To say, all right, I got a minute. Let's see what's going on. Right now, between you and me here, I want you to remember everything's okay. Now, let's see what we got to work with, right? That's what counts in the world. That's the thing that I love to do the most. That's where I feel like I shine in helping somebody, giving a hand up, not a hand out. Come on, brother, I got you. That's what it's got to be all about. And when we get online and we get all these big high-minded social ideas, it ruins our opportunity to be any kind of service or help to others to help them move along. If you look all through the lore, there's all kinds of times where the gods step in and give somebody assistance. I don't care if it's Egyptian or Norse or Greek or Sumerian. There are always some kind of divine entity stepping in there saying, hey, I got you. Come on, let's take a step this way. Here's a weapon. It'll fight it. Here's an idea. Here's fertility. Here's abundance. Are we not supposed to be doing those same kind of things? If I'm engaged in, well, I've got to build the folk. Motherfucker, if you can't build your own life, you ain't going to build anything other than your own ego, right? Figuring out where we are in the world, our lay of the land. Where am I at on the path? Well, I'm at a path where I could probably help that person, and I can help that person, and I can move forward, and I can build something. I could set an example for my children. I could set an example. I could be somebody worth knowing again, because in my past, I've not been the man worth knowing. The primary defining characteristic of knowing me was I was going to disappoint you. And I still got to work on that, because there's a part of me that's like, I'm 53 years old. I don't feel like putting up with that bullshit. Okay. Back up and regroup, grab your breath, pull up your bootstraps, and let's hear what they have to say. All right. Why is that? All right. That's true. That's not true. That's not the right perception. But that takes balls. And the only reason I have that kind of attitude today at all, at any measure, is because of this path and me figuring out who I am and me understanding the lay of the land. I'm like most people. What is it? Something like 55% of people that make $150,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck. That's ridiculous. How do we help those people not have that stress all the time? That's a married couple, $150,000 a year, where they're living paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because the rent sucks. Well, what do we got to do about it? Where are you at? So that's where we start looking at the lay of the land. Are you the lead role in your story, or are you the walk-on part, someone else's? And that's a very terrifying thing. If I take the lead role, I may not be as important to this person that I feel like I love so much. And there's a risk there. But if they're on the same path and they're doing the same thing and they're following these same suggestions and you're both moving in that direction, you've got a partner to stand by your side you could conquer armies with, right? If a couple is aligned like that, you can't overcome that. I haven't had the suggestions that allowed me to build a relationship like that. Now I'm figuring all this out at 53 because I got on this path, because I got on figuring out who I am, right? Taking that honest inventory of myself. That ain't the easiest thing to do, right? That's exactly the way to do it, right? Breaking free from those negative mentors and those ideas foisted upon us, and how we deal with the situation we're in. These have got to be the kind of hallmarks of what it means to live a good, positive, powerful heathen life. How did I find a woman like that? She read one of my books. I don't know, Sinead, why don't you tell them? Well, and here's the other thing, too. I keep seeing the red pill community talk about a high value woman and the sexual marketplace value diminishes. But then they figure out after they've been screwing around all through their 20s that now they need to settle down and they need to find stability, they need to find security, and you shouldn't accept a woman like that. Realizes who I was in my 20s. I wasn't a guy worth keeping around. I was small-minded, selfish, immature, right? That wasn't somebody that needed to be kept around. Now, there's some women out there that are real. They got a hard time. I can't speak about what they go through, but they try. They try, and they try, and they try. And then at some point, they're like, why should I even try? All these guys are acting like bitches. That responsibility of being a man is an onerous thing. It's truly tough. Yeah, it's hard. You know, I have three children that technically along the way through life, I've picked up about 5 more children that are not mine. And so what does that represent? Oh, you're a cuck. You're doing another man's work. What I have is the opportunity to make sure that the ideas and thoughts and principles that help build these individuals into something better is originating from me. That is how you build the future, right? The reality of it is yeah, it's finding a woman like that ain't easy. But it also doesn't mean that I need to. And see, there's another thing too. That's one of the things about you is that about the idea of finding who you are. It's a terrifying thing to risk that vulnerability. It is a terrifying thing to put your heart out there, knowing full well the woman you're with might rip your heart out of your chest and snack on it, right? That might make fun of you in the most inappropriate ways, that might do her best to slander who you are and what you are. There's plenty of them have done it to me, right? There's plenty of women out there that that are so hurt that the best thing they can come up with is I'm going to share this pain. And that's the thing about it's about people as a whole. Misery loves company. They will do their best to share the pain they're in with you to make sure you're just as miserable as they are. That's the whole precept of Loki, right? That's the whole idea of why he exists. That motherfucker can't be successful at anything he does. His children become monsters. His best efforts to do great things end up blown up in his face. Oh, but he created change and he allowed this to be better. And that's not the motivating purpose of why he did any of that. Usually it's to save his ass, right? He is always the walk-on part in someone else's story. And when we're living like that, trying to build a relationship, we're not accepting our role as the men we're supposed to be by creating an environment where a woman's free to be who she is. That takes a lot of risk, and she may very well eat your lunch. Never be afraid to try it again. That's courage. Yep. Yeah. It takes courage to love somebody. Even if you feel like she's gonna, yeah, she's still talking to other people, she's still doing this, she's still doing that. Are you being man enough to attract her attention? And if you are, and it goes that way, all right, you've done your level best, move on down the road and try again. But we can't let fear paralyze us from doing those things that allow us to become greater. Can't let somebody's opinion about trying to love somebody damage our ability to do so. And that is so much of what happens in today's world. I see it all the time. You surf through Instagram, there's always some guy on there talking about some woman that ain't worth anything. Probably a beautiful woman. Probably been out there, probably had so much fun, right? Probably had somebody, and it's always the same story. There was somebody that really loved her and made a difference in her life, and she broke his heart. Yeah. There's probably a whole lot more to that story than any of us realize. So we can't summarize the complexities of the power of love to, well, she broke his heart, so she gets what she deserves. Well, it's not one big act that breaks up somebody's relationship. It's 1,000 little denigrations of who that individual is to each other. A little here, a little there, a snide comment, a shitty remark, a look, so on, so on, and so on. And then confusion sets in, and I'm not enough, and I'm not enough, and I don't like this anymore, and I'm stuck here, and this person doesn't appreciate me, this person doesn't appreciate me. And as that happens while they're together, they begin to split and do their own thing independent of each other, and then they lose each other, and then it dies. And then all of a sudden we're back at square one. And well, I thought I did my best. Did you? Did you understand who you are in that capacity in that relationship? Did you understand the lay of the land? Did you understand what it meant to allow her to be her and you to be you? These are the things we learn on this path when we discover our path, when we discover who we are, we begin to take an honest assessment of the lay of the land. It's a big life. And that's the thing that scares so many people. I know what you mean. I have a girlfriend, so I have to wear sunglasses in those scenarios, but she's a little bit smarter than I am, so I don't always get away with it. At any rate, that's part of breaking free from those negative mentors that have taught us all those things. The, my father's ideas on women, they had one value, and I operated on that for so many years, and it was just ruinous. The it just was ruinous, and it cost me a lot. It cost me a lot through the years. Breaking free of those negative mentors and those ideas forced upon you from church, from school, from social media, from our parents. We're on an entirely different path than our parents could have ever imagined. Accepting responsibility for our actions, accepting responsibility for how we move forward in the world, taking responsibility, not waiting on someone else to do it for us. That's a big damn change, right? But all of those things give us an innate understanding of how to deal with the situation we are in. And sometimes all it means is having the courage to stand there and listen to somebody tell us what kind of a piece of shit we might really be. Now, if I've got an understanding of who I am, I can negotiate those thoughts. No, that's not exactly true. That's not what I was thinking. This is where I was at when I made that decision, and have a discussion, which is still a hard thing for me to do. It's still a very hard thing for me to do. And it's probably going to be hard for most of my life. And maybe I'll get old enough someday where I'm too tired. I don't care enough to fight back. But right now, I'm in my prime, right? So it's a real challenge, and it's a real challenge to grow into who I'm supposed to be. I'm still trying to figure that out. So when I write this book that I'm writing now, I'm trying to write it to the individual that I see. Who is that perfect target that I want to talk to with these ideas? What does that look like? What kind of things should I say? And it's going to be all kinds of things to cross reference, to look at this idea, and this idea repeated themselves here, here, and here throughout time and location in history. Why? What was the meaning behind that? What did it do? Well, more than likely, what it did was allowed people, little children in that community that listened to the old elders talk about it around the fire in the middle of winter, grow into viable, beneficial, contributing members of the tribe that they're in. And so much of what we see online is, well, I don't have to believe that way because, well, I'm going to use this way. Well, more often than not, when I hear somebody say that, it's because this way is easier. So what do you do in that situation? You let them learn. You give them enough care and attention to learn from it. But at some point, you got to stop investing in individuals that continue to manifest ideas that just lead to them losing in life again and again and again. Because like I said, misery loves company. They'll drag you down with it. This is all a part of this stage of discovery in this 9 towers that I'm working on. This is all a part of that. Because this is the foundation of everything that we are moving forward in the world. This is the foundation of everything that makes us, that gives us even the strength, idea, courage to develop of, I want to be this kind of man, or I want to be this kind of woman. I want to be this kind of man, and this is my goal for this, and this. Otherwise, if we set a goal and we don't have any kind of plan of action for it, that's like they always say, that's just a dream. So what does the goal look like? What does that look like? How many of us have dared to say, I can be that kind of man? So honestly, I'm too ugly for New York and I'm too dumb for LA. So I'm right here in Minnesota, and I'm still too dumb to realize, well, I can't do that. And I go and do it. A students teach, and B students work for C students because C students were too stupid to figure out they couldn't do it. And they went out there and they did it. Right? This is kind of where we are, especially with this faith, right? We're too dumb to realize, well, you can't do that. Who's going to do? And that's, I saw a man giving a presentation on the secret of life, and he said, hang out with the why not people. If you're hanging out with a group of people that say, hey, I say, you know what? I'm going to write a book. Well, why you want to do that? Nobody else is writing a book. What makes you think you can write a book? You're not going to sell anything. Nobody's going to do that, right? Who else wants to hang out with people that say, why not? Right? Oh, I'm going to make a movie. Oh, why not? Let's do it. I'm going to be an actor. Why not? Go do it. Hang out with those individuals that say that. But make sure those individuals that say that also have the ability to say, this is what's going to cause you to stumble. That's your friend. All right, there it is. All right, here in about 15 minutes, I'll be over on my Patreon to continue on this and go into a little more in-depth aspects of it. I got a couple minutes here. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments, or concerns before we shut down this magnificent discussion on the first three sub-steps of the stage of discovery in the 9 towers? All right. I appreciate y'all for joining. This will be on YouTube, and I'll upload it to my Patreon here shortly. But I appreciate everyone being a part of this, and I hope you have a good evening. And tomorrow's Monday, so go out there and grab it by the nose and whip its ass.